Welcome, everyone, to Davos Fingers, episode 139, A Silence of Three Parts. My name is Scatty, and with me, as always, is my buddy, Matt.
Greetings, everybody. Today's an exciting day, Scad.
It is.
An exciting day because
a weird day.
Weird? Yeah, weird.
It's a little different for us.
Different world, different people, different everything. Same old Davos Fingers.
Same old Davos Fingers. Fantastic writer, different writer. Fantastic writer.
Let's stop bandying about. We are covering the Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss, starting with book 1, Name of the Wind. Today, we are going to be covering the first 4 chapters of the Name of the Wind. That includes the prologue happening prior. So we end with the chapter halfway to Noir. We'll also be bringing back Davos After Dark. So stick around after the episode to chat about all things spoilery. But this first section, we are going to keep it spoiler-free.
That's right. Yeah, we haven't done Davos After Dark in like years, Matt.
We did Dragons After Dark.
Oh, that's right. No, you're right. Yeah, we did that for
House of the Dragon
for House of the
coverage.
Dragon.
But true. It's been weird, man.
It has.
It's been weird.
And good job getting the name right, because about half the time I say the Kingkiller Chronicles, which is not correct. But I love, this is one of my favorite books in the world, and I still mess it up most of the time.
Well, it's in the outline here that I was reading off of. So,
well, I still mess it up. The Kingkiller Chronicle, which we'll get into a little bit. Why Kingkiller, Matt? Why do we go with this path? Why do we do this? We're a Song of Ice and Fire podcast.
That's a really interesting question with a really interesting answer. Because we wanted to.
We usually do what we want. It's our podcast.
It is what we want. No, but we've done it. We've done a ton of Song of Ice and Fire content. It's our bread and butter. It's our passion. We love it. We loved talking to members of the Khalasar over the past few years, really, right? That we've been doing a segment called Meet the Khalasar, where we've gotten to know you and discuss your favorite chapters with you. We loved covering House of the Dragon, but we felt like we needed to breathe some fresh air into the podcast a little bit and into our content. And the Kingkiller Chronicle is one that is lauded as a wonderful work of fantasy that, you know, there is content on out there. It has a wiki, there's podcasts on it, people love it, but we felt that there's depths there that we could mine and enjoy mining, so we picked it up. Yeah, and we've heard from a few of our listeners and friends that you like it too, so obviously, we love to cater to you a little bit and give you content that you'll like to hear. So it's also for you guys.
And, you know, Matt, I'm not usually the optimist here, but maybe we'll pick up a few new friends along the way. You know?
I'm always down for a new friend.
Kingkiller.
Yeah.
You know, part of it, too, George just waited us out, man. He waited us out. It feels like we're having some sort of little silent contest. He's waiting us out. What are they going to do?
He's like, how far down to that bottom of that barrel can they get?
How long will they wait before they quit? Yeah. Well, George, we forfeit. You win.
You win,
can release
buddy.
Wins tomorrow. You win. We forfeit. You win. Any day now. Go ahead. You win. The Name of the Wind is a phenomenal read. We're excited to cover something fresh, like Matt said. And yeah, I think there's some coverage out there, but you know, maybe not as much attention as it deserves. You know, like Song of Ice and Fire has been around a lot longer, but the wiki for Kingkiller Chronicle is not nearly as comprehensive.
No, not at all.
And I feel like, not that we're going to be like, you know, the water that breaks the dam, but it could use some more attention. I feel like it could use some more spelunking by some brilliant people that might go reading this. So I'm excited to do it.
Yeah. So
how are we going to do it, Matt?
Well, you know, just in Davos Fingers fashion, kind of how we want. So, you know, when we were doing our Song of Ice and Fire coverage, we were doing 5 chapters per episode. This is a little trickier. So we've settled on 40-ish pages per episode.
40 to 50, wherever it lands.
Yeah, kind of wherever like a good chapter break starts. We're not going to go like count 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, and stop at page 40, no matter where it is. We'll find a nice chapter break, and then we'll cover however many chapters fall within, like Scad said, 40 to 50 pages.
Yeah. And actually today's 38. So we're already getting light. At least 38 in my
Shaving
book
it
anyway.
off.
Yeah, so we'll do it much like we did before. Like Matt said, we'll do brief chapter summaries. We'll have spoiler-free discussion for the chapter, and then we'll do a spoiler section, which Matt mentioned Davos After Dark. We've slightly tweaked it to be Devi After Dark, and that's a character we'll get to know a little bit later.
Spoiler alert.
I mean, well, spoiler alert, but also, I mean, we named our podcast Davos After Dark, or Davos Fingers, and he doesn't get introduced until the second book.
Until the second book.
So
it's not really a spoiler to introduce new characters. It's just a new character that's coming on. We don't know anything about the person, what they're going to do.
But I will say we are still Song of Ice and Fire diehards. I would say, snarky comment about, giving up in the face of George's protest of not releasing. The second he releases, we'll go back to Winds of Winter. Probably.
Name of the Wind on the shelf. Winds of Winter.
Which is funny to say because Name of the Wind might be my favorite book, but new content from George would, we'd probably go right back to it, just in case anyone was wondering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Another fun thing that we got going on is new and refreshed Patreon content. So for all our patrons, look out for some of this stuff. And those of you who've been thinking about it, now might be the time. We're going back to some varied content where we will be releasing a special episode every month, kind of on a rotating basis, right? So first up and already released earlier this month was
Clerks 2. Matt's favorite Kevin Smith film. We had been doing the Kevin Smith films kind of, we took a little pause in the middle as we did some hangouts with Films Get Fingered, but we've been doing the Kevin Smith films, and we skipped right over Jay and Bob Strike Back and went to Clerks 2. It was a lot of fun to talk about. I thought we covered some really good ground. Even just talking, like usual, Matt, talking to you brought up new thoughts that I didn't have until I talked to you, which happens almost every episode we do together, but a lot of fun. After that, though, in March, we're going to do a Kalasar hangout. So we'll get together some of our patrons and we'll hang out together and have discussion about various things.
Which will be fun because that coincides with what happens every March.
I don't know, Matt. What does?
A certain tournament that brings about much misery, pain, and woe.
A song of madness.
Yeah,
that's right.
Who knows where the conversations can go as we bandy about that.
That will give us plenty of fodder to discuss. And then after that, in April, we're going to start in what a project I'm kind of excited about.
Me too.
I don't know exactly how it'll go. We haven't really laid all the groundwork for exactly the format and everything, but this is a Game of Thrones reread project. I kind of called it We Should Start Back, which is the opening line to the prologue of Game of Thrones. Premiering in April. It's been a long time, frankly, since Matt and I even read A Song of Ice and Fire. I mean, we put that down and picked up supplementary materials in like 2019, a while ago, right? I mean, a long time ago since we really reread it. We're going to reread it in quicker order, right? We're not going to do 5 chapters. It'll be more than 5 chapters per episode, but we'll cover it in less depth and more a vein of kind of what's changed in our heads.
Yeah.
About these chapters.
What have we learned, right? What have these years taught us?
That's right. And then the thing I'm most excited about, Matt, is what? Coming
in May, brand new concept. I don't think it's ever been done before. Don't steal it from us, guys. Like, let us have this in May, okay? Don't rush and do one in April.
Figure this out. Come on.
We are going to be doing a roast, celebrity roast style, the Jeff Ross type roasts that you see of Justin Bieber, Alec Baldwin, guys like that, of A Song of Ice and Fire characters, right? Where our patrons are going to be able to submit roast content, and we are going to throw an online roast through Zoom or some other online platform where we can get together and just roast the crap out of a certain A Song of Ice and Fire character. It's going to be so much fun.
It's going to be so fun.
Especially with the character that we're starting with. A certain teeth-grinding, jaw-clenching king. Well, he thinks he's a king. That's right.
He is the rightful king, Matt. And he'll keep saying it over and over again. I'm sure it will.
So join us for the roast of Stannis Baratheon coming up in May. Yep.
Yeah. More details to come about how you can participate and how that works. But join us for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, yeah, details still a little hazy where it will be released and all those things, but we'll figure it out.
That's why we're pushing it out till May.
And that'll be the last thing we do.
But then we'll start back around. So when June comes back around, we'll go back to Films Get Fingered. Then July will be the Game of Thrones reread project. No, wait, Google Hangout. Then, yeah. And then we'll just go and just rotate through those 4 kind of segments every month.
You also, though, may be wondering, you guys skipped February, and we did skip February because we have a very special episode coming in February. It's going to be a public release. We're going to talk to Grant Piercy, a good friend, who wrote a fantastic novel named Galahad. If you haven't read it yet, go get it. It's a lot of fun. Made me think a lot differently about the Knights of the Round Table. And we're going to interview him about his work and talk about it together. That'll be a public release, but we're doing that in lieu of some Patreon content in February. So look forward to that. Yeah,
that'll be so much fun. We've been talking to Grant about getting him on the show for a while, and glad we can finally pull the trigger on it. So
yeah. So diving into Kingkiller Chronicle, the Kingkiller Chronicle. We're going to keep it spoiler free until the end of the podcast for that Debbie After Dark segment. So that means we will not spoil future content in the series in the main portion of the podcast and savor that special section. So we'll warn you when that's coming. Jump off if you're not interested in spoilers. And here we go. Matt, how can they contact us?
Well, we'd love to hear from you. Especially, we want to hear, one of the things we're nervous about is if you even like this departure from A Song of Ice and Fire. So we'd love your feedback. And you know where to find us these days. DavosFingers.com. We are DavosFingers@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is @DavosFingers. We're on Facebook. And like we said, we encourage you to learn about our Patreon program and see if it's something you'd like to be a part of. Not only does it give you access to our special episodes, but it also gives you access to these episodes a few days earlier than the public. So hopefully that's another perk you can take advantage of. They come out on Friday, so you have them for the weekend, whereas the public release happens on a Monday. So learn more about our Patreon program at patreon.com/DavosFingers.
Yeah. And one of those things I was thinking, Matt, I have the summary for this prologue that's coming up, and it's one of my favorite pieces of writing ever. It's something that hooked me immediately. I've never been more hooked maybe by a piece of writing than I was with this prologue. And I thought instead of doing a summary for it, I would just read it.
I'm going to sit back, put myself on mute.
I decided not to do that. But I think maybe I might do it as a little Patreon thing. Just give a dramatic monologue of this opening bit. Thought it might be a little fun to do that. Anyway, here's a summary for the prologue. It was night again. The Waystone Inn lay in silence, and it was a silence of 3 parts. And like I told you, it's tempting to just read the whole thing because that's how it starts, and you can already tell it sounds really good. It's one of my favorite pages in all of literature, but I felt like it's a little long to just read, and I'm not sure I could do it justice on the main podcast. Anyway, here we go. The first silence described here is, I think, the silence most of us think of as silence. It's the obvious lack of sound. Nobody talking, no annoying recurring noises like dripping water or someone mindlessly moving about a space, no footfalls, no breathy intakes of air as you lift something and groan, just absolute noiselessness. It isn't nefarious or harmful in any way. It's just maybe a little bit unsettling, but it's not malicious. The second silence adds to that first silence, and it's a more purposeful one. 2 men huddled together in a quiet corner, intent on making no noise. They could easily make noise, but they're trying not to. These are not seemingly joyful men, at least not in this moment, and perhaps they indicate something about the time or the place they are in that's unsettling. They do not want to disturb the silence. It feels intentional, and it adds weight to that initial silence. The third silence is very hard to explain, and the author said it's hard to notice. To me, it represents the silence of things that serve their purpose well, but are no longer needed. The heavy black stone hearth with an expired fire, the wooden floor with no feet to make it creak, the barrels distributing no drink to customers, and the cloth seemingly at work, moving about the counter, continuing to buff, but really offering no additional cleanliness or shine. Its work is done, and so is the man doing the polishing. He's done. These things are no longer needed. They're finished, at least for now. and they are at rest. The man himself, we should note, seems special. True red hair, and he moves with purpose and certainty. His eyes dark, perhaps from the weariness of the world, and they are distant also, maybe for the same reason. And it ends like this. The waystone was his, just as the third silence was his. This was appropriate, as it was the greatest silence of the three, wrapping the others inside itself. It was deep and wide as autumn's ending. It was heavy as a great river-smooth stone. It was the patient cut flower sound of a man who was waiting to die. And that is the end of the prologue.
Absolutely lovely. Lovely retelling, lovely writing.
Yeah.
I agree. It's got to be one of the most gripping, thought-provoking prologues.
Bless you.
Man, that one came at just the right time.
Yeah.
Didn't even have time to mute it. That I've read, for sure. Do you think like Rothfuss wrote that very first? That he just like sat down and was just like, ooh, I'm onto something here.
You know, it's a good question, Matt. And it's the kind of question that highlights where we are with this book. We don't have, I don't know. That's lore that like we might know with George. We know the story of finding the wolf pups and the stag, right? Like we just kind of knew that story from the story being old, and we just kind of had read it and knew it from blogs and things. I don't know a lot about the origins of this. I don't know the story about this. It might be that he finished this last. I really don't know. It's a great question. I would think that this, I would think that Rothfuss had a very good idea of who Kvothe was and what he was like, and the fact that who he is has to be embodied in this inn, and the state and the place he is in his life has to be embodied in this inn. And so maybe he came back to the idea of writing this whole thing later, but I think he understood that relationship early.
Sure.
Yeah. And I want to highlight some of the language, maybe the most, the part I relate to the most, at least. Two parts. One part, and it's that very last part, the patient cut flower sound of a man who is waiting to die. When you buy someone flowers, you're buying them death.
Sure.
The flowers have been cut. They're dying. Their end is known. They're not going to live. They're not sucking life out of the ground anymore. They're not doing anything with the sun's rays to continue their lives. They're dying. I've always thought that it's weird. You're buying someone something destined to just wither and die. And they're pretty for the moment. But we have a, red-petaled hair of Kvothe, very bright. Probably hints that he's a special man, that he moves with certainty, but his best days, they're behind him. Like a flower in a vase, he's just slowly dying. He's no longer useful. That third silence that's his, it implies that he's done his work and he's just resigned to death. Will he last a week or a month or a year? Who knows? But the beauty that he was, the wonder he had, that's going to pass. That's certain. It's cut flower. It's dead. He's been separated from whatever it is that gave him life, right? And for the first 2-3 years after I read this, I was like, cut flower. Like, it doesn't make any sound cutting a flower. What is that? The cut flower sound. Oh, a cut flower makes no sound. It's not growing. It's not doing anything. It's just sitting there dying. Right. And that's probably my favorite part of the whole prologue, is that cut flower sound of a man who's waiting to die.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. There's imagery like that throughout, just even these first 4 chapters that are really lovely to read. I took some notes on other ones that we'll definitely call out here. And with it talking about his determination and everything, and kind of that confident way that he moves about, the silence is of someone who can do more, but for whatever reason is not. And that lends kind of a tragic, melancholic feel to this prologue.
Yeah.
You feel someone that has this potential or ability to be a very electric personality, but for whatever reason is suppressing that.
Yeah.
And that suppression is a certain amount of silence.
And it absolutely is suppression, because this is a young man. We don't know that here, but we do know it throughout the rest of the episode, so it's not really spoiling anything. We get told that this is a young man. This is not a 60-year-old person whose life is, or 70 or 80 or any of that. He's young. And I don't remember exactly when we get the age, but he's young. And
too young to be an innkeeper, sure. I think
too young to be an innkeeper is one of the things they say for sure. And so he's suppressing it, or it has been suppressed, one of the two, but it's certainly not normal for someone of his age and what should be youthfulness. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Matt, one part that I thought maybe you would latch on to that I didn't really cover in my summary, but no, of course there was no music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this lends to the somberness of the scene in the world in this place, in general. It feels like it's a place that's maybe like too tired for music.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Too tired for music. Yeah. Music for me it makes me feel. Mm-hmm. And I don't even say it makes me feel it makes me just feel. Period.
Something.
Yeah. I feel sad. I feel energized. I feel joy. I feel angry. When I listen to music, I feel something, and that's why I love music. Mm-hmm. And so that there's a silence, not only in a lack of music, but in perhaps that lack of a feeling, a tiredness, like you said. So.
And we're used to, I can speak to the D&D crew maybe a little bit here, but like we're used to, you start at an inn and there's music playing.
Yeah,
and the adventure kicks off.
A lute or something.
Yeah, exactly. Some performer in the corner singing or playing, a lute or something. An inn with a lack of music means something to us, mm-hmm. Based on the other stories we've read. Much like George does, he wants us to feel like this is different, I think. Not to spoil too much, but music means a lot to this person. Perhaps that's a spoiler. I won't go into too much depth, but the fact that there isn't any is meaningful. Right? We'll get into that more later.
Oh, show.
This thing is the prologue is only 350 words. The prologue I wrote, Matt, and my summary was 400. So my prologue summary was longer than the prologue itself.
I was going to say, you talking about your decision to not read the whole prologue probably took as long as if you just read it.
Yeah, it just felt wrong to do it. I don't know why, but
that's totally cool. I'd look forward to hearing it.
Do you have anything else for the prologue?
No, I do not.
A beautiful piece of writing. Even, like if anybody's listening here and they're maybe not going to go on the journey, just at least go Google and read this prologue. It's fantastic. It's so good.
I will take pictures of the pages and post them if you are that serious about not reading the book. You need to read this prologue. Yeah. All right. Do you want to go to that chapter 1?
Let's do it.
The official beginning of the story.
Let's
Chapter
do it.
1, a place for demons. It's 9:00 on a felling night.
The regular crowd
shuffles in.
And that regular crowd is 5 people.
To the Waystone Inn. In this case, 5 is a crowd, and one of them, Old Cobb, is regaling the rest with stories of the legendary Taborlin the Great. Graham, Jake, and Shep are used to the stories and listen contentedly as they blow on their hot soup. But the young Smith Prentice boy, he's a little more engaged. On they speak about the mysteriously evil Chandrian, Taborlin's ability to command obedience of all things simply by knowing their names, and the exchange rate for kindness to a tinker. When all of a sudden, Carter bangs into the dining room. He's covered in blood, his clothes ragged and torn, and he's carrying something wrapped in an old saddle blanket that looks like an awkward tangle of kindling sticks. He says he's fine, but he's obviously not fine. When someone says, "I'm fine," as often as Carter does, they're usually not fine. "I told you for months now, you can't go out alone," chastises Old Cobb. assuming that it was thieves or other scallywags that roughed up their friend and killed Nellie, his gentle horse. Boy, were they wrong. Onto the table, Carter sets his wrapped bundle and reveals a horror. A spider creature as large as a wagon wheel, black as slate, with no eyes and no mouth, with a hard as stone body and razor-sharp legs. Scrael. The innkeep identifies the creature knowingly. It's the first time Kote, the innkeep, has spoken up tonight, and it takes the others by surprise. Noting the surprise, Kote walks it back a bit, claiming that he's just heard about them, but he's never seen them himself. They try to break the legs of the dead creature and can't. And then they note the cracks on its stone-hard body, and Carter reveals that it only died because Nellie fell on it, hence the cracks from the smushing. It's a demon, the patrons wonder, and Kote sets out to test that hypothesis with a piece of iron, just a little iron coin, noting that iron kills demons. The touch of the iron on the corpse causes it to loudly crack, filling the room with the smell of burning. I guess that settles it. Or does it? After the patrons have left for the night with their corpse in tow, Kote methodically cleans the inn, even though it really doesn't need it, and returns to his sparsely decorated bedroom. He's soon joined by Bast, the dark and charming young man who calls him Reshi and Master, and who's brought him an evening meal. Their conversation goes quickly from Bast's lessons, which he didn't do. He was too enamored with a lovely young lady, to what had transpired that night, and how it's a wonder that Carter lived and the Skraeling died, and how there was only one Skraeling to begin with. They obviously know much more than what Kote had originally let on to knowing, and Bast feels a certain sense of responsibility in helping the otherwise defenseless villagers against this new threat. But Kote assures him that he helped the priest dispose of the corpse in the proper way. It was all done by burning, and there's a whole process. So what else can they do other than that? So that's it as far as the excitement goes at the Wayside Inn, and Kote feels guilty for keeping Bast there with him. There's just not a lot going on, and he feels Bast's talents and potential is wasted here at this inn. But Bast is dedicated and loyal, declaring, "Who else would teach me?" and makes his exit to go study, in theory, leaving Kote again to his thoughts. This is a long chapter, but we're ending it here. The next day at the inn, the topic of the previous night's horror was skirted, and instead they bandy about news of the war and what it means for their town. There's increased crime on the roads, there's inflation from the much less frequent traders, and maybe even a possible levy tax, another one, to fund the war effort. It all leads Scad to a rather grim evening. And that's the end of chapter 1.
Yeah, it's funny. I love the way Rothfuss ends this chapter because we've just had a supernatural experience, the likes of which none of these 5 people have ever seen before. And the next night, they're just talking about taxes and, where they might get another horse, or like when the next trader might come through town.
Right.
And he makes a note in the text of kind of saying, like, oh, well, they all know not to try to convince anybody of anything else. They'd just be called crazy. And, I think it's a hard thing to put your finger on, but it feels like Rothfuss just kind of has a real sense of this community and these people and what they're about and how they believe and how they think. It feels lived in. It feels real. Mm-hmm. They know to just move on. It says something in the text about like demon stories don't happen here. They're part of stories, like they happen with kings and other people. There are no demons here. That's silly. My friend doesn't kill them in the street. They get killed in legends and tales. And Rothfuss just has a very good understanding of, these types of people and how they.
Yeah, how these small communities work, right?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Even when things happen, everyone has their place. You have certain things that you talk about. You have certain things that you complain about. Your day goes a certain way. People do certain jobs. They even talk about how the Prentice Boy, even though the Prentice Boy was bigger than everybody else there, will continue to be called the Prentice Boy forever until he finally punches someone in the face for calling him the Prentice Boy. Exactly. Then something might change, you know?
Yeah. It's a simpler, I mean, their friend comes in bloodied, nearly dying, and they take a moment to respect the horse that died. Because they all know how important a horse is in their community.
In the community,
it's his job. It's just a huge.
Well, how are you going to do your job if you don't have a horse?
Oh my God, such a great horse! I'm so sorry. The guy's bleeding to death, almost, and they're taking like a moment of silence for the horse. It's just a good. You'll see it throughout the series. Patrick just has a fantastic hold on everyone he's writing, and it's brilliant.
Book recommendation for everybody. Speaking of these small communities and how these work, this resonated very well with me. I just read a book called Beartown by Frederick Backman, the same guy that wrote Man Called Otto. Is that the name of it? That just got made into a movie?
The Hanks movie, yeah.
Yeah, the Tom Hanks movie. It's about a small community in Sweden whose life revolves around the local junior hockey team and how they do. And how they respond to a very big shakeup in the community. Very fascinating how a community will rally around what's comfortable and normal rather than what's dangerous or upsetting or even correct. Yeah. In the case of Beartown, what's right. Strong recommend that you pick up that book. Blood Rider Lindsay recommended it to me.
I was going to say,
thank you, Linz.
And
I'm reading a lot of Star Wars. We're reading this right now, all that stuff. So I thought, I'll just pick this up and kind of read it when I have a few minutes here and there. Read it in 4 days.
Nice.
Breezed right through
That's
it.
The best. That's
amazing. So hard recommend on that one. And kind of that same feel, this town where you are expected to be and act and think and talk a certain way. And anything else, even as upsetting as this, you just put it under the rug.
Got to. Well, what else are you going to do? They're going to show up again. You got to keep living your life. Got to,
got to eat.
Yeah. Got to keep sowing the field. Got to keep pounding the iron.
Man, I wish I would have bought some salt the last time the dude came through town. Because it's freaking expensive.
Yeah. The people, we've hit it maybe hard enough already, but Old Cobb is a favorite of mine. You can just picture him. Everybody knows a guy like Old Cobb. Just wants to thinks he's always right. Just tells the stories. Listen to me, I'm more important. But he's got a good heart in there. It's just kind of he's. And that
speaks to he's just a microcosm of all of this.
The community.
He tells the stories, and the three guys just listen, and they've heard the stories a million times, and it doesn't matter because that's just what happens at the end. Is he just tells the stories and they listen. This was one of the notes of a sentence that I loved. Old Cobb tucked away his bowl of stew. You know what I'm going to say? With the predatory efficiency of a lifetime bachelor.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That
is so good, Rob.
Brilliant.
It's so good. It's so good.
The predatory efficiency of a lifetime bachelor.
He just wants to get back to his story, man. Just get the food in there. Do its job. Let me get to my story.
No time for talking. There's no one to talk to for a lifetime bachelor. Right?
Yeah, just let's get this done. Yeah. No, it's great. There is a note. They talk about tinkers or traders that kind of wander all over the road to town and trade and sell and fix.
They're like a traveling general store.
Yeah, it's a good description. Yeah,
/ handyman.
And it notes that I think it says that Kote hasn't interjected in all the months he's been there into their stories, but here he interjects to make sure they get the tinker rhyme right. And later, and it's within this episode, but later, in this episode, he interjects, or he falls down, right, and pretends to be hurt, and here he pretends to be embarrassed. I think he interjected on purpose here to make sure that they understood the way to treat tinkers properly, because it's very important to him. Small thing,
which is interesting.
Worth mentioning, because tinkers are important to him.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's something to kind of keep in that back pocket as we go through this story.
Absolutely.
Do you know what a felling night is?
No.
Me neither.
No. There's a segment I have. I've got a vocabulary segment. I don't know what to name them yet. We'll work through this, right? We're workshopping a little bit, but there's vocabulary in this story that is not common that we don't know. There's also, like, frankly, Matt, like, if I have one complaint about this series, the maps are fucking horrible. I have no idea where the fuck
I have that same note
happening.
too. What a waste of a map. It helps 0%.
0 people. You don't know where anything is.
It's got like 5 points on the map. None of them have anything to do with anything we've read, at least these first 4 chapters.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can, if you're really looking, and I've tried a little to be a good podcast. I've tried a little to look and try to learn about, like, kind of where I think they might be. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the map is garbage. And it's my biggest complaint. It's always been my biggest complaint about the series. And maybe a little biased coming from the great maps that we have with Song of Ice and Fire. But
yeah, we're used to some great ones.
We don't know where any of this shit is. Like, almost nothing happens in the major, well, at least yet, happens in the major towns. And so you don't know where anything is. And it's not just a complaint early in the book. This happens throughout the series, and it's annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yep.
Can we talk about the story a little bit? I made a Twitter post about George and the introduction of the others, and how it's right there in the prologue, immediately setting the reader at edge, and what is this, and who are they, and what will happen next. And I feel like Rothfuss does something a little bit similar here with this Skraeling that comes in. Like, what is this thing? All of a sudden, what is it? And then, like we said, they just kind of walk away from it and they ignore it, and we don't know anything about it for a little bit, right?
A little bit.
For a very little bit, I suppose. But again, later in the episode we'll get there, but we don't get much still, right?
Sure. Yep.
And kind of interesting. You get most of what you know from tales, not from any sort of real experiences, right?
Yeah. Same with the Chandrian too, that are presented
Chandrian
as this
also.
great evil. That this is something that George does very well in his books too. We don't get any sort of setup.
Yeah.
Of like, here's a good jumping off point for this story, and let me catch you up before we go. This is the people, this is the culture, this is the nope. Just throw you right in, and we're gonna throw around names like Chandrian and Taborlin and Telu and Skrael, and you just figure it out as you go.
Yeah,
so,
and
I love that. I love when that happens, actually.
And yeah, it's good, but also it's slightly different the way Rothfuss does it too. You're just getting it through stories, kind of like Old Nan, right? Like, you don't see them like you do in the prologue of Song of Ice and Fire, where you like experience them immediately. Most of it's through stories.
Mm-hmm.
The Chandrian especially, it's like, what are they? Well, it's just tales. We don't,
songs
we don't know.
That kids sing.
Yeah, exactly.
Ring around the rosies. Yep.
Dude, I have the same note. Man.
Mm-hmm. I like just how the silence follows through in this chapter. In this case, the silence of Kote. And they talk about, if not for the silence, it's unlikely anyone would have heard him.
Yes.
That's on a couple levels. First, just the general volume level of the Wayside Inn, the could we call it physical silence? There's just no sound. But also that idea that when someone who doesn't speak much all of a sudden speaks,
Silent Bob syndrome.
You can't ignore that, right? Yeah. Talk about that with hockey players, and I imagine other athletes too. There's those leaders that just go out and lead by example, and they don't say much maybe in the locker room or on the sideline. But when they do, you listen up because you know it's well thought out and it's something they've been chewing on for a while. So I just like how that silence follows through into this first chapter and the different levels of it. It's harder to hide in silence.
It's true. I'll screw it up because I'm not a huge baseball guy, but I remember there's a story about Ichiro. You know Ichiro? The Mariner, Suzuki, yeah. He's a pretty quiet guy, but like, he's great. Makes the All-Star game every year. And apparently, and I'll screw it up, but he gives this like rousing, like, let's go fuck him up speech at every All-Star game, even though he's like a quiet guy, right? And it's like this kind of big galvanizing moment for the American League players. I feel like I should have reviewed that story before I shared that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's the same idea. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah.
Yep. It soon became obvious the polishing was only an excuse to touch and hold.
Mm-hmm.
The guy with some sensory things he needs to always be doing and touching and feeling.
And yeah, that's maybe something for Devi After Dark. But yeah, I think he's a man that is used to doing a lot with his hands. It seems like, and that maybe calms and comforts him, right? This is unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
He's also, I think it says later in the chapter, when he's talking to Bast, just tell him, he's talking about how he stitched up Carter, right, his wounds. And he's like, tell him my dad was part of a traveling caravan and he taught me how to do that, because they're going to ask later, right? He's worried about people being like, innkeeper? Really?
Yeah. Usually people want to, human nature is look at how smart I am, right? Look at how capable I am. We tend to want to show off a little bit. He's like, I'm going to distance myself from as much knowledge as I can.
Yeah, he's definitely he's in an interesting place where it seems like he does not want to be known.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we'll get to some other behaviors that contradict that.
Yeah. The tragic part of all of this is he could really probably do some good in this tired community with the knowledge that he seems to possess on a few different levels. But
yeah,
for whatever reason, he feels or he knows or he can't.
It's interesting the way you put that, because part of him very much wants to be involved. He says at some point, he says, anything would be nice. He's referring to, maybe I should have bought the Scrael from Carter and posted it on the wall. We could get some business. And Bast is disgusted by this, right? He's like, are you crazy? You can't do that. But he's like, anything would be nice.
He says
the phrase, anything would be nice.
Yeah, he goes business and busyness.
Mm-hmm.
Just something. Yeah.
Anything would be nice. This is a deeply dissatisfied human. And while he's decided to do nothing, like you say, he's battling. It feels to me like he's battling inside about doing nothing and doing something, like maybe at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have anything about Bast? Got any?
He seems fun. He seems like something Kote needs. He needs him.
Yeah.
He needs someone with energetic youthfulness who's going to come at him with just straight up, the ladies are hot, man, and they get in the way of my studies. That's just how this is.
Keeps him young a little bit, maybe.
Right, yeah. And Kote can't help but smile.
Ironically.
I think it's a nice relationship.
Yeah.
And obviously incredibly devoted to Kote.
Reshi,
which is cool.
Calls him, which I think is like a teacher kind of thing. Mentor.
Yeah. It's very similar to a passage in the Bible for our Bible readers.
Ooh.
He's with his disciples or his apostles, and a lot of people are abandoning Jesus because the things that he's teaching them are sometimes hard to hear. He's asking them to sacrifice a lot, and Peter and others stay, and Jesus asks Peter, are you gonna go too? And Peter says, where would we go? Thou hast the words of eternal life. It's kind of that same idea of who else am I going to turn to?
Yeah.
You've got what I need, man.
Yeah.
So
if I didn't know any better, maybe I could just go out and fish or something. But dude, I know I can't go anywhere else now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true. He seems to know stuff, about the Skrael specifically, he says you can't just let them muddle through this on their own. There's something apparently very specific you have to do to deal with dead Skrael. We'll get more into that maybe in Debbie After Dark, but Kote says they did everything right by accident, or
right.
I paraphrase that, I didn't get exactly right,
Mm-hmm.
but there's apparently a path you have to take to do this the correct way, and Bast knows it. Bast seems clever, seems like he's there to learn, but also seems like he's got maybe a lot to offer too.
Right.
Reshi is a mentor term, but sometimes they feel almost like they're talking as equals to me.
For sure. Yep. And the thing that Reshi has is he's got a slyness to him where he's smart, but he also understands people. And there's lots of people out there where you have to deal with them, where you can, I don't want to say manipulate, but you can kind of direct someone, but they're a little hard-headed, and you kind of have to help direct them by making them think that the direction they need to go is their idea.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Inception.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe Kote did a little bit of that with the disposal of the Skrael, is just prodding things in different ways that would just lead them to go, maybe we should use this.
Maybe the priest knows. What's the roan? What's the tree? Roan?
Roan.
Oh, Rowan.
We should do that.
Yeah. That.
We should.
Yeah. Pit, is it 6 feet? Oh, no, 10. You're right. No, it's 10. Yeah, he's kind of prodding them.
You got to make it feel like it was their idea for it to work.
I don't know if this is a word of the day component, but just some vocabulary quick. There's some terms in here that get thrown around. Span. I haven't seen him in 2 span. For whatever reason, Rothfuss decided to not go metric with their day system. A span is 11 days.
Come on, 11?
11
well, I guess we do
days.
7, so it's not a whole lot better.
7s are normal. 11 is their normal. So a span is 11 days. A shim, it's also a derogatory term for a certain portion of the people in this story, but it's also the lowest form of currency. Hang on. 11 shims make a drab, but 10, the rest of it is metric. 10 drabs make a jot, 10 jots a talent, 10 talents a gold mark. So a shim is the thing that he breaks the Skrael with, that he pushes against him, that iron shim. It's the lowest form of currency, essentially. There probably are lower things like a fingernail, but like
that's regularly what does the job on the Skrael, is the lowest form of currency.
Yeah. It feels like, I think one of them says the word of God, iron and fire, right? True iron and cold fire, or something like that.
So remember your currency. There will be a test at the end of the podcast.
And remember the things that kill demons, right? Even though Kote talking to Bast says this is not a demon, though it's probably, I think Bast says it's probably best they think it is the Skrael. So we don't know what they are, but
a little actually moment by Kote.
Actually. So they are not demons, but they do seem bad, and they think it's best if the people think they're demons.
Might as well consider it a demon. Yep.
Which also implies maybe there are demons. More coming there, perhaps.
Yeah.
We've been on this chapter for a long time, but I feel like there's at least one more thing we need to talk about.
It's a long effing chapter.
It's a long chapter. It's also, I think, the most important chapter in this coverage we're doing. The thrice locked box in Kote's room that he makes a point of having 4 or 5 paragraphs on this thing. Kote's eyes won't fall on it. He tries to deliberately avoid it. And when he sees it and his eyes actually rest upon it, he gets almost like visibly older and more weary, right? And is a lock, there is a lock of iron, a lock of copper, and a lock that could not be seen on this box. And We don't know what it means, but it seems important. And I just thought we should bring it up before we move on. That's all.
Yeah, and interesting that in a sparsely decorated room like his room, he chooses to have it in there, but obviously he doesn't want to see it. So that's interesting to me that it's not like, if I don't want to see something, maybe I'll take it out back and bury it in the ground or something, put it in the basement, put it up in the attic, not keep it in my bedroom. So it's obviously something that he wants to keep. He wants to know where it is, I think.
Yeah. It either has tremendous value or tremendous importance.
Correct.
These are not exactly the same.
Correct.
But yeah, it seems like it's important to him, even though he doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
I'm trying to think of a comparison of something.
Yeah.
It's important
Ashes,
to me, but
maybe?
I don't want to see it.
Ashes of a loved one, maybe.
Maybe.
I don't have that, but yeah, Dance with Dragons.
My bank account. I want to always know it's there, but I don't necessarily want to look at the details of it.
Yeah, hard to come up with a comparison, but I think that serves its purpose, right? We're saying like this is a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's made of, I think it says in the text, a very rare wood. Like it's
super
very
expensive.
valuable. It's very expensive. I think it says having a fingernail's worth would be worth gold, and he has a whole chest of it.
Yeah. Now the 3 locks, are they like on the outside, like a lock, and then a lock on the outside? Or is it like there's one lock and then you open what the first lock is securing, and then there's another lock within there that you have to unlock and open there?
I'll say I don't think the text we have in these chapters tells us.
Right.
And also the wiki doesn't tell us. There might be more that's not in the wiki that we get later, but more in Devi After Dark, but I think we don't know much about this.
Yeah.
I think it's being held on to
purposeful
for the future. Yeah.
Hey, did we mention the 3rd book's not out yet, guys? That's on brand for us.
It's on brand.
All right.
Last thing before we move, one more thing before we move on.
Okay.
Crazy Martin trying to dig a well inside his house for years. It's what we all have, essentially a well inside our house, right? Bringing water up from the ground.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a forward thinker.
He's just ahead of his time. He just wants a sink, guys.
He just wants a sink. He just wants water in his house.
Or a friggin' toilet.
They think he's crazy. He's just he's just smarter than everyone else.
Spoiler alert, time travel exists in the Kingkiller Chronicle universe.
At least for Crazy Martin.
For Crazy Martin.
Seems that way. All right, chapter 2. You got anything else for chapter 1?
Chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful day.
You too. Yep.
It was a perfect autumn day when Chronicler was robbed on the road. The 6 men, ex-soldiers all, were polite enough as they commandeered his horse, the new shirt he'd just purchased, a blanket, cloak, other bits of clothing, food, supplies, trinkets. They did leave him with one blanket, some stale food, his riding supplies, thankfully, because that's his very likelihood, a couple pennies to buy dinner that night, and even his necklace with the iron pendant on it. They bid their adieu in a genteel fashion, and Chronicler set out to make it to Abbott's Ford on foot by dark, where he was hoping to buy a new horse, because Chronicler is smart. As the bandits moved out of sight, Chronicler sets to refill his own personal coffers, at least the coffers that people would see. Gets into the lining of his boots. He's got coins hidden in there. He's got some hidden in layers of clothing. There's even some money baked in to a stale piece of bread. Brilliant idea. And he takes enough money out of each of those little hiding places and puts it in his purse, just enough that future bandits wouldn't search too thoroughly for more. It's a crappy way to live, but here it is. All of this was really a minor inconvenience, he thought. He could still easily buy that other horse as he makes his way to Scarpi and Treya. He was a little startled. He had to go to the bathroom, so goes off in the woods, and he's a little startled by what turns out as he sees it to be a crow beating its wings from the underbrush and taking flight into the air. But as he brushed off strands of spider webs clinging to his face, he found himself feeling remarkably lighthearted on this beautiful day. Lovely day.
It's a beautiful
lovely
day.
Lovely
different
day.
song.
Lovely day. I'm feeling the music.
You're just riffing. All right.
Prologue's not feeling it. I'm feeling it though.
What an optimist, I guess, first of all.
Yeah.
This guy.
It almost felt like a Monty Python scene, like this one, just of like a really nice robbery.
Yeah, it is. So it's maybe my favorite robbery ever. So the Chronicler feels comfortable bargaining from the start, right? With these outlaws, he's like, well, you wouldn't really want that. My horse isn't that bad. Like, he's bargaining with people that are, robbing him. It's pretty hilarious. Mm-hmm. They lay everything down. They hide nothing. It's very efficient. They ask him, just hop down. We'll take care of this. It'll be done very fast. They leave things they don't need. They leave him his livelihood, like you said.
They make him trade out certain things, like
they take one of his blankets, but they leave him a worse version. Yeah,
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
One guy even apologized. He's like, I'd leave him my lighter. It's a lighter, something like that. I'd leave him my tinder box. Yeah. I'd leave him my tinder box, but I lost mine. I'm so sorry to do that to you. Almost.
BS,
right? Like,
I call BS on that.
No, maybe, but he's at least like, there's criminals don't even have to make that effort. They don't have to.
They don't.
He's at least making the effort, right? It's very genteel, this whole operation. They even repack for him. They're like, all right, well, let's put your stuff back in, that we're not taking.
Got a lot more room now.
They leave him some beef jerky, this is nice. It's good. And in turn, the Chronicler is like, hey, the alcohol you took, don't drink it, man. Like, it'll make you sick. Like, they're just very polite to each other. It's nice.
Which I would be, nice. Drink that sucker. Drink it, you son of a.
Probably you and me both. So that's the first thing, is that it's just such a pleasant robbery to read. And again, I'd say it just kind of like, if I were to write a scene like that, it would be like all the robberies you've ever read. But Rothfuss has just like this different way of making this feel real and lived in. They're just dudes. They're taking the stuff they need. They don't want to hurt anybody, really. Like, it just fits. It feels real.
And it almost feels like an old Western movie, like a train robbery, and you got the polite cowboy bandits that are like, thank you, ma'am, as they rob them and everything. Yep. And so that just leads, we're familiar with those stories too. And so this just feels like very like, yeah, I get it. Yeah. So
the other thing
you can see that other influence.
The other thing I think this is trying to do is just give us an introduction to the Chronicler, right? The Chronicler he's an intelligent guy. He gets how this works. He's playing along. He knows how to hide his stuff so it won't get found. The rye bread thing is amazing. Never would have thought of that myself. Good job, Rothfuss, for putting that in. Very smart. Mm-hmm. I just feel like it's meant to be a character introduction about this man that can take hardship and just be okay with it. And also be smart enough to look forward to it and overcome it.
Yeah, right? Stay ahead of the game a bit while still playing the game. Yeah.
Exactly. This dude is no fool. And I think that's what Rothfuss is trying to do with this section.
Yeah, good call. I think so too. I totally have experience with this. Living in Brazil, we would do this exact same thing with our money.
Oh, you'd hide things in different places?
Yeah, you'd always want to keep some money on you.
Yeah.
If you got mugs, so you could give them something and not get hurt.
Me. Good job.
Here's my 10 reais. Oh, there you go.
Dang it. I really needed that.
We even had some of us had belts that had a little zipper inside, and you could fold up bills and put it in your belt. But socks were a good place to put them too. Like, inside your tie, put money in there. Yeah, as a missionary, you wore ties all the time. So.
The hard streets of Brazil.
There was one street in particular in one place that was...
Stay away from that one.
Yeah, those were stories I did not tell my mother until after I'd come home, because she would have come to Brazil and got me if I would have told them while I was there.
Do you remember the ties we had at our company? What was that? What did they say inside? It was... I forgot.
No, they said I still have some of them.
Oh, me too.
They said remove before sex.
Oh, yeah.
And then
It's a good idea.
in the fat part of the tie, everybody, you look on the back side and you'd have to like fold the fabric down, and it would say remove before sex.
Oh,
and then on the
yeah.
small or thinner part of the tie, if you did the same thing, it would say ... or not. KONOT. Yeah.
Yes, I remember now. Yeah.
Company was cool.
Is.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's still right there.
Kind of.
Is. Yeah.
We're in an interesting spot. Anyway, anything else on this section here?
I don't think this is getting too ahead of the game, but brushing away invisible strands of spiderweb seems very telling.
It felt interesting, didn't it?
Yep.
I didn't know whether he was lending something there, or do these Scrael spider
do they produce web?
Do they produce web or mushroom web?
Because he said he heard something rustling in the underbrush, and then he saw a crow flying away. Crows, I mean, sometimes they land on the ground to eat carcass or something. But I feel like they would have been more up in a tree. So what I'm saying is, I think it was a Scrael in the ground.
Yeah.
And somehow the Scrael decided not to attack him or whatever. But
decided is an interesting word, but I'm picking up what you're laying down. Why include that whole scene period if it's just a crow? It seems a weird thing to include if it's just a crow. Why? We don't. Okay. Oh, look, lighthearted fun with being scared while you pee. Doesn't add much. Feels like he wants us to think it's a Scrael.
Mm-hmm.
But also that implies some interesting things about the Scrael that we don't need to spend any time on, I guess. But anyway,
overall, a fun chapter.
Lighthearted fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like you look at A Song of Ice and Fire. What's happening overall is very reminiscent of maybe the Riverlands in Storm of Swords and those areas. Very dangerous to be out walking around. You're going to get robbed. Ex-soldiers are a major danger. But this one, that's very bleak. It's hard to read those chapters sometimes because it's so bleak. This is like the same situation, but somehow you leave this chapter smiling.
No, it feels more Duncan Eggy, right?
That's true. Yeah, it's got more of an upbeat.
There's some sunshine in this scene somehow.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it is time to thank our patrons, which Matt, we haven't done in a long time.
Haven't done in a while.
Back, I felt really bad because we're supposed to do it every other episode. We thank all of our Dirty Cab Driver level and up patrons, supposedly every other episode. And we'll go ahead and dive in. We have a new one this month, Chris B. And Chris, I'll reach out for your code name if you have one in the next month. But Chris B, recent patron.
Yep. Also an enemy spy, master of dungeons and lord of dragons.
Lindsay F.
Little Wolf Bird.
The heir of House Tyrell.
This one.
Marcus P.
The Bard of Legends, Aaron M.
Gib.
Ghost Chase Killer.
Bobby S.
And of course, Lady Fatas Red. Fatas Red. Then we got our reach around level patron scad.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Keyboard of Mr. J, the Bear and the Maiden Fair.
Oh, and they so are.
They are.
And of course, our mixed mage of the Wolf's Wood.
And at our Team John level, as always, since basically the start, Misa, our queen of gifts and beauty. We love you, Misa. It's been a while. We should chat.
Thank you, patrons. We appreciate all that you do. We love you. We love you.
All right. Chapter 3, Wooden Word. I'm going to go ahead into that summary.
Head in, pal.
Graham, apparently the local woodworker, has come bearing a gift. It's a mounting board for Kote's sword. Folly, the sword is called. A funny name for a sword, if you will. Anyway, Kote is really excited. Well, as excited as Kote gets. He's been waiting for it for 4 months. After being handsomely paid for this difficult work, Graham leaves Kote to hang the mounting board, and Bast enters to admire it. With Bast, there's always questions. And this brings one. troublesome one. Those tend to be the only worthwhile kind, Kote answers. What were you thinking? Bast says. It's not clear exactly what Bast is referring to with this question, but it appears he disagrees with the decision to mount this sword. A decision that Kote admits he made the choice and is trying not to second guess it. Kote hangs the mounting board and Bast produces a sword. And is it ever a beauty? Dull, gray-white, slender and graceful, deadly sharp. Not a scratch on it. It looked new, but was actually very old. With an unfamiliar shape for a sword. The sword Folly. They get on to their day, busily cooking and cleaning, tending to the end, when the oddest thing happens. People come in. Nearly a dozen of them. Get the sense this is a real rarity. And they flew into action, serving them food and drink, making coin. It imbued Kote with life and energy. The tinker set up shop outside to sell wares and grind knives, doing a brisk business. The party ate and sang and told stories, and Kote himself joined in the singing, leading more verses to the common song Tinker Tanner than anyone had ever heard. But as the night grew late, Quoth? You're Quoth, one of the travelers drunkenly stated. Kote, sir, Quoth replied. But the man insisted this was Quoth. He recognized the singing voice. He'd heard it before. He knew it was him. Kote demurred, trying to put this notion to bed, to assure this man that he was not Quoth at all. Are you saying I look like Quoth? The Quoth? I've always thought so myself. He stands to leave and falls down, hurting himself and creating a scene. Bast helps him upstairs, only to learn it was all a ruse. Quoth has Bast give the man something to help him sleep, and also gives Bast a story that he must repeat to these travelers casually tonight, to convince them he is not Quoth. The next morning, after the travelers have gone, Quoth goes to the blacksmith and gets a rod of pig iron 2 feet long. For superstition, the blacksmith assumes, and an extra smithing apron and forged gloves as well, for cleaning out an old bramble patch, Quoth insists. The blacksmith also tells him that some of the Orison's missing sheep have turned up, shred to ribbons. These two things are surely unrelated. Quoth closed up early that night and went to bed. No customers were around to notice, but it made Bast uneasy. So, we start with Graham bringing in the mounting board. It's not in the summary there, but it's noted that even Graham, who doesn't know Kote very well, notes how hollow he seems. Duller eyes, duller hair, wan, pale almost, like he's not as full of life as usual. Interesting. I don't have anything else to say other than interesting and not good. It's not what you want for yourself, probably.
Another a beautiful metaphor or simile. Plant, like a plant moved into a wrong part of soil where it can't grow.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Of the
so
sword.
It's so hard to read these things and not be able to talk about it. So go ahead.
Yeah. Of the sword, deadly as a sharp stone beneath swift water. Like, you get that. You understand what he means. Like, cut you up, son. But it's hiding. Sneaky dangerous.
Yep.
Yeah, there's so much foreshadowing here. Like you say, difficult to talk about. Even simple lines like, Kote held it a moment, the sword, and his hand did not shake.
His hand did not shake. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get the sense that this is a man destined for other things, or used to other things, at least. It reminded me of the line in Lord of the Rings about Theoden. Your hands would remember their strength if they held your old sword. And again, I'm paraphrasing. I didn't get it quite right, probably, but it's
yeah, totally. Yeah, good call.
Where as soon as he picks that sword up, he's like, "Oh, I know how this works." Like, I get this. I've done this a million times. It's fantastic. That reminded me though of Labyrinth and the little dog guy. Yeah. Are you a Labyrinth guy?
Nope. No, I is not. No, I is not.
You've never seen it?
I've seen it.
Okay.
Can't say I wanted to see it again after I saw it. Don't tell Graham.
No, that's fair. Labyrinth is. I feel like it's one of those ones where if you watched it as a kid and loved it, it's got that
The
nostalgia
sentimental
factor.
value.
Yeah. But
yeah.
if you didn't, you watch. I mean, my wife didn't. She wasn't a fan when she grew up. She watches it now. She's like, "What? Why are we? What's going on here? Puppets and I don't get it." I'm like, "But no magic and like the guy, like friendship."
She's like,
Yeah,
I'll be in the other room.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, no, she sticks it out. She's a good sport, but yeah.
I'll be cleaning the tub or something.
Also, the Jennifer Connelly. So, like, let's just back the truck up a minute.
Top of your list there, yeah.
She's up there.
She's right up there for you. You love yourself a Jennifer Connelly.
Back to the sword.
Yeah. I had this note and almost forgot about it because I put it too far down. I didn't put it with my other stuff talking about the wandness of Kote. Yeah. But Graham thinks of Kote as wilting. I think you said it too. Let's go back to our cut flower analogy, right? Yeah, I love how he pulls those tiny little metaphors and analogies through to, we had cut flower in the prologue, and now we have wilting. Right?
Wilting and wrong soil as well.
The wrong soil too. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting.
And also, like, they talk about his hair being like flame red, like the petals of a flower almost, maybe, but like now fading, like a flower maybe.
As they do.
Yep. So Bast comes in and sees the sword, and they both just kind of look at it for a minute. It says, as if a tribute given to the dead. And this could be a few things. And this is not a Divi After Dark thing. This is all speculation from my perspective. It feels to me like just the fact that the sword is named Folly, that this sword did something that he regrets.
Folly.
Right? Tribute given to the dead. Something that he regrets that caused pain, death, anguish, real.
And almost like he needs to remember that.
Yes. It's not a sword he's hanging in celebration. It's a sword he's hanging in effigy. But also maybe it's weird, but also maybe reminds him of those days.
Yeah.
When he needs to be, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. Like a Dave Matthews poster.
Or shirt.
Yep. New album out May 19th, everybody.
Did he win that election 2020? He should have.
He should have.
Awesome.
Dave would have been a great president.
Actually, I have no idea about his political leanings, but
he's quite liberal. You love him.
Let's put him in.
Yeah. Also South African, but
Oh, so he can't run at all.
What are you gonna do?
Actually, well, if he's
how long do you have to be an American citizen to run for president? I knew that in high school. I don't know it now.
You have to be 35 and nationalized, but I don't think you have to be born here. So,
okay,
I think, right?
I'm pretty sure he's an American citizen.
No, you know what? I think 35 and nationalized is the role for Congress and other things. But president, I think you need to be American, like born here, or
hold on,
with parents that are born here, like citizens. Right?
I think one of his parents is American, so
he's in.
Yeah,
he's in. Let's elect him. Let's do it. Let's libertarian or wherever we got to go. Okay.
He was a Bernie guy. He was a Bernie guy. I remember that.
Oh well, that's very liberal. Let's put him in right now. Hey, if you haven't listened to the podcast before, sometimes we're very obvious about our political leanings. You're welcome.
But it does feel like this conversation with Bast and everything, and Bast is like, WTF, man, why are you doing that?
Why are you doing that?
This is a really dumb thing to do.
Yeah. And he's like, well, I did it. It's like, you haven't done it yet. You don't have to hang it. You could just put the board away. You still have an agency here.
Almost like it implied, or what I'm inferring is, we've talked about this. You've talked about this. Like, this is not what we're supposed to be doing here.
Yeah.
And you almost see him as he's wilting, as Graham describes it. You almost like a softening, like, I'm going to display a sword from my past.
Yeah.
And this gets into the next chapter, but it's the next chapter we're going to discuss, so it's really not too much of a spoiler. The whole thing with the Orison family and the Orison boy. This to me is where Kote decides he's going to make a difference, is when he finds out the Orison boy is coming around trying to get people to buy mutton just so that family can make some sort of ends meet after the deal they've been blown by what's obviously the Scrael attacks. This is when he decides he's going to take more of a firm hand in making a difference for this community. So it's almost like this softening. He's letting his guard down a bit at the same time as he's wilting. So it's fascinating.
Very. And that's an interesting point about the Orison boy. I don't have a moment. I didn't pick a moment where I was like, oh, this is the moment where he decided he's going to do something. I felt like it's more of like a constant give and take. Like he doesn't know, almost like he doesn't know who he is. Like he's just fighting like, do I or don't I? And it's almost like on a whim he decides which
he
thing
just
to
makes
do.
a decision.
Yeah.
When
almost.
I stop thinking and simply do what feels right.
That exactly. Yeah. Like it's just like, oh, well, I'm doing it. I decided and I'm doing it. And I'm not going to look back. I'm just going to do it. But I like that idea. I want to hear more in the next chapter.
Yep.
So then we get in this chapter what is, we just talked about the fact that he's inviting being known, putting this sword up, almost like asking somebody to be like, Folly, I heard a story about that. And look, that with the red hair and the...
You've got red hair.
It's you.
Uh-huh.
It's you, right? And yet this incident happens hours later, literally the same day. And he's terrified that he's been caught.
Oh, crap. Of course, the day I hang the sword.
Yes, I hang this, but it wasn't the sword that gave him away. It was the fact that he decided to sing.
Yeah.
Right. And this person,
again, letting his guard down, softening up.
Yep. The sandy-haired man. Well, we have something to talk about
Traveler.
Here. The sandy-haired man is what they describe him as. The sandy-haired man recognizes the singing voice. He heard him sing in Imra.
I've heard you sing before. Yeah.
Exactly. And he sounds kind of a fan. He's like, I saw the cobblestones where you did the thing. He sounds like kind of like an Uber fan. Like he knows him, right? And not a fan of car service rides, but you know what I mean. So here he is, and Foth is terrified, immediately puts on an act to try to hide everything and not be discovered.
Mm-hmm.
How can you, I realize I'm putting you on the spot and I apologize, but how can you explain being so brazen with the sword, which must be somewhat recognizable, and absolutely terrified of discovery a few hours later?
Yeah.
Do you have any explanation for that?
No, other than just being a human being and not being perfect. Yeah.
I want recognition. Oh, don't look away.
Right. Yep. It's an interesting study into people. We do it all the time, right?
Yeah.
We hide our wounds and then we post about it on social media. Yeah.
I do know, sadly. I guess it's not an explanation, but it is maybe an argument for he's really struggling with this.
Yeah, it's hard for him.
He doesn't know whether to put it away or to be someone or any of it, right? He's just very unsure, to the point where maybe it's even like, this is not a Devi After Dark thing. This is not knowledge I have from anywhere else. It's just like, there's
you analyzing a character.
Yeah, there's magic in this world. Like, has his brain literally been like clouded to the point where he doesn't know who he should be? And it's like a constant kind of, I don't know, right?
Yeah. Fun trash TV right now on Peacock is the reality show Traitor. Have you watched any of that?
Traitor?
Yeah.
Did you tell me about
like
this?
Betrayer. Maybe I did.
Years ago, though. Like, is it old?
No, it's new.
Oh.
It's new.
I'm
just
thinking
came
of.
out.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of the what's the famous traitor in American history?
Oh, Benedict Arnold.
Benedict Arnold. Didn't you tell me about a series about that I also never watched?
Oh, it's an American Revolution story, not necessarily about Benedict Arnold. Yeah.
Okay. My
But
bad.
this one is just a reality show about a bunch of contestants, and they go and stay in this big mansion, and 3 of the contestants are traitors. They're murderers. And every
Not
night,
literally. I hope that'd be illegal. Okay,
that would be fun to watch, right? Every night, the 3 traitors decide on someone, secretly, clandestinely decide on someone to murder.
Do they squeeze their hand 3 times?
Yes. Just like I'm doing.
Like the wolf. What is it? You know what I'm talking about.
Everyone
knows what I'm talking about.
And
Murder in the dark.
That person is dead and they have to leave the house. And then, the rest of the housemates have to try to put together clues of who the traitors could be, knowing it's one of them. There's 3 of them. And those 3 traitors are just mingling amongst them, trying to hide their identities. And if the traitors make it all the way to the end of the show without being discovered, they win all the money. There's a big prize at the end. And if not, the remaining surviving non-traitors get the money. So, but
can't the non-traders just wait to see who leaves to make the killings at night and just be like, oh, look, these 3
you'd think we were wondering
think.
about that. Like they would have to be super quiet as they snuck out of their rooms to go meet up with the killers.
I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. They all do have to go to their rooms at a set time at night.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
and then
okay.
Somehow the traitors are able to sneak out and go meet up and decide on who they're going to kill. I'm telling you all this to just say that we finished the show we watched it as a family. Great family viewing. Oh my God. Yeah.
Okay.
We all sat and watched it as a family. And
I'm not judging you, man, but
it was kind of fun. It was total trash. It was great. The traitors were talking about, you think it would be fun, right? To be all secret and everything. And they talked about how just intense it was all the time to just be constantly living a lie and having to constantly watch every little thing you say, every little move you make, every single reaction to receiving some piece of news. You have to always be wearing a mask. Yeah. And just how exhausting that is. And so even explaining what magic or not, that just probably gets exhausting for a human being after a while, having to live this life. Now they had a nice prize at the end. They could win $100,000, $250,000 or whatever it was. Kote, as far as we know, there's no light at the end of the tunnel for him.
There's no, you're just going to die, man.
You get to live this way and then you die.
You got this in. It's nice.
You're waiting to die.
There's a box in your room that you can't open. Congratulations.
Yeah. So that was a really long way of just saying that's got to be exhausting. And sometimes you slip up.
Yeah. Agreed. And he does. Cole does. He slips up and he tries to cover it up. There's a little bit of risk in it, in trying to get Bast to cover it up. But he's basically, they slip him some sort of drink, that supposedly makes him forget. Right, that maybe he won't be believed the next day when he's like, that was Quoth. Yeah. And they give Bast a story to tell so that they'll all be like, no, he was just a mercenary guy that took an arrow in the leg, and that they'll combat his story with another story. But I gotta ask, it's probably just a mistake, but they keep talking about the sandy-haired man is the one that's saying, you're Quoth, I know you, I remember you. Then the next morning, it says, where is it? Everyone understood except for the sandy-haired merchant's son. Well, before that, it was all about the sandy-haired merchant, the sandy-haired man. Did Bast give the potion to the wrong person?
Oh, that's a good thought.
I think it must be a mistake. I don't want to dwell on it. Let's not waste any more time, but
no. Let's give you some credit here, man. Let's say you were onto something. That would be cool.
Well, the reality is that the chronicler comes to the inn and then, it's a spoiler, I guess, but the chronicler meets Quoth in the very next chapter. So the jig is up. The only thing that would make sense is if like he gave it to the wrong person and then they spread the truth about Quoth and someone discovered them. Well, he already gets discovered.
Right.
So I'm not sure it matters, I guess.
Okay.
It's probably just a mistake.
Okay. Or
And
there's,
a sandy-haired
multiples.
man would likely have a sandy-haired child, right? So let's just move on. But
yeah, sandy hair, I guess, is common-ish.
I noted it, I guess is all I'm saying. So anyway, yeah, the next morning, the Skraelar are killing sheep, and Quoth goes to go get gloves and a blacksmith apron.
And a big honking piece of iron.
And a big piece of iron. At that point, he's decided, right? And it's
Skrael hunting time.
To your point, you said like that's the moment he decides.
I think so.
Good morning, Reshi. Good morning, Bast. Kote said, any news? The Orison boy stopped by, wanted to know if we needed any mutton. Kote nodded, almost as if he had been suspecting the news.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it goes on and on. But like that could be the moment. Like it wasn't just that moment. It was like overnight. He was like,
if I get any sort of indication
that this is dangerous for people, I'm going to do something.
Right.
Like maybe that was what he was thinking about
exactly
that night as he sat eating his stew,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why he didn't do any of the chores.
Yeah, exactly.
Which he usually did every single night.
Which he usually does, and no one noticed because no one was there. But yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, I like it. I like your idea there. You have anything else for this section?
No. We'll carry that theme about the not doing the chores and stuff into the next chapter. Let's go to it if you're ready.
Halfway to Noir. I'm ready. Halfway to Noir. Chronicler had been unable to procure a horse, so on he walked toward Noir. But night had fallen, and Chronicler was lured off the road by a light. A farmhouse, he suspects. One that might take him in for the night and spare him the road. But what he finds is a raging bonfire in the middle of a ruined old house. A bonfire that stinks of burning hair and rotten flowers. And a bonfire by which Kote is huddling. That is, until Chronicler speaks to him, and Kote jumps up to defend himself with his long pig iron cudgel. Chronicle tries to step away and leave the man to his fire, wanting no trouble himself.
He's like, dude, I'm sorry.
Right? Yeah. Hey, whatever weird stuff you got going on, man, go ahead. It's fine. I'll just go that way, or whatever way you let me. But Kote will not let him leave, insisting that if Chronicler goes back out there, he's as good as dead. But when the traveler asks, what's out there? Kote's not sure how much of what is about to happen he should share. He kind of sizes him up. He decides to give him the details. Demons in the shape of big black spiders. There's no such thing as demons, Chronicler replies. To which Kote says, well, I guess we can all go home then. Listen, I'm guessing you're an educated man. I respect that. And for the most part, you're right. But here and now, tonight, you're wrong. Wrong as wrong can be. You don't want to be on the wrong side of that fire when you figure that out. The level of certainty with which Kote responds to him makes Chronicler move to the other side of the fire. And before they could do really anything more than a little advice of how to fight what's coming, the Skrael descended upon them. The first jumping right onto the Chronicler, knocking him over and out as his head hit the stone wall behind him. The last thing the Chronicler saw before passing out was Kote standing still and ready to fight with his long iron rod. When the Chronicler came to, Kote was sitting there by the fire and the Skrael were gone. 5 there were, and Kote apparently killed them all. But he needed help burning and burying them. Ash and rowan wood had been cut, and they needed a pit. Chronicler laughed. Kote was following the directions from a children's song to bury these demons. You'd be surprised the sort of things hidden away in children's songs, Kote replies. Chronicler gets up to help dig, but then passes out again immediately, leaving the heavily wounded Kote to do the digging all by himself. And that's the end of the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting little section. A little bit of
we get some action.
Well, almost.
Sort of. I mean,
almost. You get like it's like a tease of action.
It's like in Game of Thrones, the television show, where they didn't have the budget to show the battle at the Green Fork, and so they just had Tyrion get knocked unconscious early on in the battle, and then they just show him waking up.
Yeah. It's a good comparison.
Yeah, but I wonder. He said in the last chapter that Kote didn't do any of the chores he normally did. He just like went up to bed, and I wonder if Homeboy like snuck out his window. Is this the same? I don't know if it says if this is the exact same night of or what, but even like symbolically, it's like him. These chores, I don't need to do them now. I don't need to be in constant motion and action and touching and holding and polishing because I'm going spider hunting tonight.
Feels like it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we know for sure. I don't know if it matters exactly, but it feels like he closed up early so he could leave early.
Mm-hmm.
Why go get the pig iron and the mittens and an apron if you're not doing it today?
Sure.
Feels like he went, that night. I don't know if it matters that much, but yeah, it feels like it. Yeah.
And interestingly, when Chronicler sees him, his description of Kote is completely different from how Graham had seen him earlier that day. He describes him as having impossibly red hair and shocking, vibrant green eyes. Shocking, vibrant green eyes, right? Like
in the dark of night by a
this
campfire.
is living for Kote. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I think again, I don't know how far to take this theme. I don't even know if it's real, but the warring between fading away, and still living, having physical attributes within his eyes and hair is interesting, right? Is he choosing to live or is he choosing to fade away? Well, when he chooses to fade away, you can see it in his attributes. A little weird. I don't love it, to be honest. But it's not real. People, that doesn't happen with people. But
sometimes
as fiction, it's not bad.
Yeah, in fiction, it's not bad. Sometimes it's also just perception.
Yeah,
like if he
you can see the vitality in people, and it seems everything's more brighter and engaged.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's Chronicler's first time seeing him, so maybe to him those eyes look very green, but to Graham, who's seen him every night and everything,
Also,
the bloom is off the rose to bring in the flower,
off the cut rose. But in this, he's also being lit by a bonfire. Like
it's a cool atmosphere.
Fire extending to his actual hair.
Yeah.
So these things sound brutal to fight. Are you upset that we didn't get any sort of action sequence of any kind?
I am a little upset. I would have liked to see more. Yeah. I've heard that the series has been optioned for television or movie. Who knows if it'll ever happen? But at the same time, part of the exciting part of this chapter is the lead up to it. And Kote trying to quickly prepare Chronicler. Like you said, it's very quick, but you do feel that anticipation and kind of that, something crazy is going to happen. And that's almost as exciting as the action sequence itself. So I get it. How about
you? Yeah, I would like to read it. This is I would say this is very much a series that is not about action.
Sure.
Like most of what you get in conflict wise is not super detailed. I guess that's a little bit of a spoiler. More like thematically what you should expect to read when you're reading this. But I'm a little disappointed. It would have been not like most, honestly, it's less about the action, more like what happens when he hits them with the iron? Do they shatter? Do they, like, how vulnerable are they? Does it just make them squeal and they're right back on you? That's more what I'm interested in, to be honest, is like the lore of it.
And like,
that's
frankly,
probably
just
intentional.
yeah, like catharsis. Like, well, I'm freaked out by spiders, and that whole scene where it just says you could see them coming at him, and like they're skirting around the fire and then hopping at him, like right in his face. Like, I want to see some spiders getting it, man. I want to see those spiders getting it.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I don't even know what to compare it to. I didn't watch the end of Game of Thrones, but I did in Game of Thrones, when they hit them with Valyrian steel, did they just like explode?
Yeah, it's really not awesome.
Did they explode though?
I'm trying to remember if they like dust or like, I don't remember. Someone here
Well,
knows. Someone listening knows.
Someone does. It's almost like, I want to know, like, does the iron just like obliterate them? Or is it like just it's the only weapon that's barely effective?
Yeah, that's like,
and still it was terrible.
Yeah.
And you just got to touch the thing with the gun. It's like, well, I could probably do that.
Right.
Like, just like touch them and they explode. But it feels like maybe it's not that vulnerable.
Fun to
unless
see.
they're dead.
Yeah.
We'll get more of that in Debbie.
Just out, just like thumping him, just seeing him out there, just like, like Steve in Stranger Things when he's fighting off the dogs with his bat with the nails in it, just like thunk. I just want to see
Stranger?
that.
What is it?
Steve in Stranger Things.
Oh yeah. Stranger.
Steve Harrington.
I heard Steven Stranger. I'm like, who's that? Awesome.
Doctor Strange. What? With a bat with nails in it?
Okay,
it's
so
I'm slurring my speech. I'll take fault in that one.
Me too, maybe for other reasons. So they then need to bury these things, burn them and bury them. And the chronicler makes fun of him because he's using a children's song for the rules. And one of my favorite things in these first chapters we have is that he's like, yeah, like, there's good shit in those children's songs. Like, there's real stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And more coming in future episodes about that. But it's real, man. Like, there's real stuff in there, and some of it's bogus and has been translated poorly, but there's real stuff in there, and that's good that it survived, and we should make sure it continues to survive.
Yeah, I like how he takes it to another level of, Tolkien used a lot of songs.
Mm-hmm.
Martin uses songs. Rothfuss uses children's songs.
Yeah.
And it's just an interesting take. I like it. Rockabye Baby in the treetops. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah.
Parker Posey in the, nope. What is it?
Parker Posey is a baseball player.
Posey.
Ring around the rosy, pocket full of
Parker. Oh, Posey. You know where I'm going. Anyway, more coming on all of that with the children's songs and where the secrets are hidden. But yeah, so he's gonna burn them and bury them. Chronicler falls asleep and he does it himself. And that's
passes out, kind of.
Yeah, he kind of passes out from the
sat up too fast, whatever.
Yep. Yeah. And that's all we get until the next episode.
That's it, guys.
Unless you have more notes. If not, we can go to Debbie After Dark.
This is where I had my note. This map is pretty effing useless so far, BTW. That's my note.
It's terrible.
The map is pretty effing useless so far, BTW.
I have a where in the world segment, which I haven't figured out what it should, like, where in the world is
anything in this book.
Yeah. Except, like, we got to come up with something more clever than that. But when we do, we'll come up with a musical segment. Maybe. And Matt can, like, guitar it, and I can sing it, or he can, or whatever. But yeah, it feels like there's a lot of mystery around where a lot of these things happen. I have maybe a few answers, but we'll get there in Debbie After Dark or another time.
Right. Yeah.
Should we go to Debbie After Dark then?
Let's do it.
Are we doing the or are you gonna, like, put something together for it?
I'm gonna put something together for it, so you'll hear it right now. Debbie After Dark.
Thanks everyone for joining us, because now it's time to enter the realm of book spoilers in a segment we like to call Devi After Dark, which you just heard the thing for. Good job, Matt.
Yep,
I'm really impressed. Devi is a character that will show up later in this book. One of my favorite characters. She's fantastic and kind of morally vague, but also just kind of
those are the best ones.
Sweet in her own way, also, but super smart and just clever and just taking the world for herself. Anyway, I love Devi. So Devi After Dark is a segment in remembrance of our segment, Davos After Dark.
Right.
I want to cover the prologue real quick, Matt, with just a very quick one. We talked about it a little bit, but this, one of the reasons I originally recommended this series to you is because I thought you would identify with how tied in music is to it. Absolutely. Music is a huge part of this series. First book, second book, I assume third book too. I don't actually know. I kind of want to look at what Rothfuss's experience is with music and whether he's a musician himself or, you know, what exposure he has to it. But
I think he played bass on some Carlos Santana albums.
Honestly, would not shock me.
I don't know.
I'm sure you're kidding me, but it wouldn't shock me because the man has genius within him. Yeah. So I guess it's just kind of, well, I think it's purposeful that there's no music in the prologue. I think it's meant to offset the rest of the book, and specifically this character, Kvothe, who lives by his music. You don't know that yet, but he lives by his music. And the fact that there isn't any shows just how much he's changed and how much of him has just been left in the dust.
Right.
Because Kvothe without music is useless.
He's a wilting cut flower.
Yeah, wilting cut flower. Well put.
Well, I didn't say it. Rothfuss did.
Yeah. Anyway, I just want to point that out. It's the only thing I got for the prologue. Is just that music is a huge part of the series. I kind of hinted at it before when we were talking about the prologue, but I think it's meant to show just how far removed Kvothe is from himself in this moment.
Yeah.
At this end.
Yep. Yeah, this is this identity crisis. I don't know if it's a crisis because it's a very deliberate choice, but no, of course there was no music. That just lends itself so beautifully to reread.
Yeah.
That you go back and go, of course. Oh yeah. Yeah. Obviously there wouldn't be music.
Obviously. So if you don't have anything else for the prologue, we can move into chapter 1 where most of the good stuff is.
Of course, yeah.
Feels like. Taborlin is how I say it. I think you said Taborlin, maybe. Or,
probably.
Yeah. I don't know what the correct thing is. I didn't look. Taborlin is, I feel like, maybe we should back up. I feel like these early sections of Devi After Dark are just going to be kind of like, these are the players, and maybe this is what these things mean. I'm not sure how deep we'll get into some of them. Taborlin, though, is an almost mythical creature. Figure, at least. Not creature, figure.
Right.
Stories abound about him defeating enemies. There's lots of speculation about who might be Taborlin. One popular theory is that one of Kvothe's future teachers, Olodin, is actually the real Taborlin. Taborlin has all sorts of tools and stuff, but I think much like most of these stories that you hear from people like Old Cobb, they're stories. You don't know what's real. Most of it's like, maybe it's just the naming they're doing, and it looks like they're using a key and a coin and all these things as magical props, but I wonder if most of it's just the naming.
Right.
You know?
That is interesting how he leaves that bit of doubt in us. Could he really be, or is he not? But regardless, he is a very popular figure. Almost Jesus Christ level, but at the same time, this guy's a warrior. So, yeah. But he seems sly too, well educated, knows the name of everything. Right.
Yeah. And we'll learn more about naming as we go, but even the people that know names, the people that become arcanists and learn names of things, they don't usually know the name of more than like 2 or 3, right? And you get the sense that Taborlin knows many. More to come, I guess, is all we maybe need to say. But he's maybe a more recent figure than some. I mean, we'll get into a lot more of the history with Solitos and the Amir and lots of other legends in this series, but Taborlin is more recent than them. He seems more on the forefront of people's, stories.
That's true. Yeah. The mythology of A Song of Ice and Fire is so old, right? Like,
very
10,000 years old of the wall and all of that.
Taborlin's hundreds, and these the Amir are more like a few thousand, right?
Yeah. So I hadn't thought about that before until you said it, but this does feel more recent, more graspable. Than I remember early on when we were covering Game of Thrones, and you would try to put into perspective how long ago something was, and just like 10,000 years is just unimaginable for us.
Yeah, totally. It was like 10,000 years ago wine was invented. Like, holy shit. I don't remember if that was the exact example, but it was something like that, right? Like, it's crazy to think about, like it was a long time ago. Nobody remembers that. Nobody can remember the stories of those days, not with detail.
Correct. Yeah.
This feels a little bit more recent. I wonder if that's, not that Patrick was reading A Song of Ice and Fire and trying to make changes or anything.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm going to do it differently.
I'm going to do it different, but I wonder if it was intentional that he wanted it to feel more recent. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I do see him as kind of like a guy who kind of challenges, or not, and like you said, not like I'm going to go do the opposite of Martin or Tolkien, but he does try to challenge just the generalized tropes, if you want to call them that, or just like well-held traditions of fantasy writing a little bit. Like you said, less of a focus on action scenes, which is a very big part of fantasy, fighting dragons and things like that. And even some of this stuff, Tolkien is notoriously, his stuff goes back even further than Martin does. And that's
hundreds of
too.
Thousands. Like,
it's really fun to
it's
go
not even on this
back.
continent, actually. It's over here in this place you don't care about. Yeah.
And you'll never hear about again. But I'm going to tell you about it anyways.
Unless you spend 12 hours on the wiki like we do.
Yeah. So I feel like Rothfuss, I'm interested to dive into this more and see if that statement that I'm making is really correct. If he does maybe challenge things a little bit more, kind of a newer guard of writer that's going to look at things a little differently.
Yeah. I wish I had more to add to that. I feel
I really don't.
I feel almost guilty, like I should have done more research about Rothfuss himself and what he stands for before diving into this. But it's, that's how we do things here at Davos Fingers.
Now we know.
We're gonna figure it out as we go. To me, my impression of him is that he just wants to tell his story. And
and I love that.
He's probably not thinking a lot about what other people are doing. He's just kind of doing his own thing. At the same time, he used the term tinker, which is from the Wheel of Time. They use the same term for, they're not exactly the same. They're not, but still using a term for a traveling folk that, wander through the land.
So he still pays homage,
Perhaps that's what it is. Yeah. I think he has a wonderful handle on the things he's trying to tell. I'm not sure how much he's trying to support or subvert the tropes. He's got the story he's trying to tell. But I don't know. I want to look into it more now that you bring it up.
Yep.
Totally
down with what you're saying.
Real quick, I want to talk about the chest, which is the only other thing there's a lot we can talk about in this chapter for Devi After Dark, but the chest in Kote's room, according to the wiki, weighs 400 pounds when empty. I think that comes up in the second book, Wise Man's Fear. We have no idea what is in it. Presumably he does.
We still don't. Yeah.
but I'll bet like $1 billion it's something in his past that he regrets, or something from Denna's story, or something of his own personality that's like locked away that keeps him from being whole.
Right.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't delved into this at all, but iron is has been noted already as harmful to the scrael, sorry. But also later in the series becomes known that it's harmful to fey creatures of any kind.
Right.
Bast himself in a few chapters gets threatened with iron and gets his hackles up and is terrified. Copper is interesting because it doesn't have a name, right? It's from what we know in the fandom, copper isn't something that namers can name and control. They can control the wind, they can control rocks, they can control stone, they can control all sorts of other things, but they don't have a name for copper. And so this box, if it's got an iron lock to keep the Fae out, and it's got a copper lock to keep namers out, and it's got a regular lock, right, to keep regular people out, that's maybe the goal. And I wondered if the third lock, just regular people, who cares? I wondered if that third lock is meant to keep Kvothe himself out. That there's something inside. We get the sense over these first few chapters that like Kote is not the person he used to be. Mm-hmm. Whether he wants to be or not is a little uncertain. He seems like he's struggling with that. Like what his responsibilities are.
Yeah.
Like he's faded. He's a cut flower. His hair is fading. His eyes are less sharp. All those things. But like, what does he want to be? I wonder if like a part of him, his soul, or like his essence somehow, or like his potential is locked away in there. Right? And that he can't get to it. And so when he looks at it with just heartache and pain, it's because he knows his essence is like in there, right? There's a concept. I didn't invent that. A little, maybe. I didn't read the Harry Potter books. I feel ashamed and also proud at the same time. But I didn't come up with this myself exactly. I've expanded on it a little bit, but that's mostly on the wiki. But I feel like maybe the crux of this story is that something he's done in something we haven't read in the 2 books we have has led to a crucial piece of him being locked away in this box that he doesn't have access to. And frankly, that Bast is there to like
keep him from
see if he can get it out.
Oh,
could be either, to be honest. It really could be either based on what we've seen from Bast. But but I feel like maybe help him realize his potential and get it out. That's a lot of speculation on my part. I hope to hear from Kingkiller fans that are like, dude, you're way off, you suck. I hope to hear from people that know more and tell me that I'm wrong. But that's kind of the way I feel about it.
Yeah. We get some little hints of clues in the text when he's talking to the sandy-haired traveler. He talks about the place in Imri where you killed him, right? This is the Kingkiller Chronicle. Him being a king seems like the most obvious of answers. Potentially with folly. Maybe he killed him with folly. I don't know, but it also seems like there's some magic involved too. Just the fact that cobblestones were shattered so that nobody can mend them makes me think it wasn't just you walked up to a king and stabbed him, right? There was
there's naming involved for sure.
There's a big to-do.
There's some magic going on.
And
for sure,
a large enough thing that he feels he can't go back to what he was. But yeah, whether that's like you're saying, if there's some sort of spiritual essence in there, or if it's maybe a physical connection to his past life, like his loot or something like that,
could be both. We don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned folly because, I don't think we know yet why it's named that way. It could be related to what's in that box, right? this was a mistake, and
Mhm.
and what's inside the box is represented by what you've got mounted outside the box, right?
Yeah.
Um, I
That's what
don't.
got you here.
It's been a bit since I read The Wise Man's Fear. I'm trying to catch up and read it through again, so I'm more informed. I'm 200 pages into Name of the Wind now for my fourth reread, but
Nice.
Wise Man's Fear has been a bit. I don't think we know at all about Folly. He has another sword, Cicer, I think is
Right.
how I pronounce it, that he gets on another journey. But I don't know anything about Folly. This is all we learn about it. So
I think I read that there was some. Oh, I shouldn't even bring it up because I don't remember it well enough. That there's some speculation that it belonged to one of the Chandrian. I can't think of the name now. That it
Haliax
kind of fits the
or
description
Cinder.
of
Cinder.
Cinder's sword. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a theory for sure that he's actually killed Cinder and taken his sword.
Uh-huh.
It matches description kind of the way it's been described before. So yeah, that's a theory for sure that he's taken Cinder's sword, which would be great. One of the big fears I have about this series is like similar to George. The same fears I have with George is like, man, how are you? Like we're in the spoiler section here, so you're 2 books in. There have been no king killings yet.
You got a lot to pull off, sucker.
Like, what are you going to do for the next one book? To like make all this happen, and killing Cinder, getting his sword, and also killing a king, unless Cinder is also the king, which we don't know. That'd be a lot.
Oh, sure.
But I trust in my authors, and I want Pat to pull it off, and I hope that he's not suffering from the same thing I think George is suffering from, which is tying it all together rather than actually being able to write the story, right?
With the constant crushing of expectation.
Pressure.
Yeah.
We love you, Pat. And
Figure
I believe
this
in you,
out.
and I want to read it, and I know that everyone wants to read it, but you're also not listening to this, so I don't know why I'm addressing you directly.
Maybe someday. We're putting it out there. We're putting it out there. I haven't. It feels like the last time I heard him say anything about it was kind of almost apathetic on his part, almost like I don't know if I'll ever finish it. I'm not really thinking about it right now, or I don't remember if that was it. Do you know of any updates? Almost like he was sick of everybody asking him to the point of like,
yeah. So I feel like several years ago he said something to the line of, and I'm paraphrasing. This is not a direct quote, but he said something along the lines of like, "I'd rather work on anything else other than Doors of Stone," something like that. Like, not good. And again, I didn't get it exactly right. I'm sorry, Pat, if you ever do get wind of this. I'm not trying to misquote you, but it was something along those lines. He was in a very negative place about it. He was going through some things, I think, if I remember right, personally. In the meantime, he's made a lot of progress. He released the prologue to the third book, which is again a Silence of Three Parts, and it's fucking amazing, just like the first two are. It's really good. You can go read it. It's actually he reads it himself. He did it as part of a World Builder fundraiser for his charity, and it was great. It's really good. It's fantastic. And he's been promising that, kind of like George, he's been promising like, oh, it's coming, we'll release it next year, kind of thing. He hasn't given an update in a while. I feel like it's kind of similar to
sounds like
to Winds. I feel like it's kind of imminent, but there's still work to be done, and
it's gonna do it right.
They don't want to give us all the detail, but I love Pat's writing. I hope it comes, and thanks to everybody for listening here, but we're covering it because it's great, whether we get it or not.
Yep.
I only have one more thing I want to add on the Devi After Dark section.
Okay.
And it's with respect to the Scrael. If you have anything you want to add, of course, please do. We hear that when they touch the iron to the Scrael, they get the scent of it's the same scent.
Got it written down.
Yeah, it's the same scent. Burning hair and rotten flowers.
Rotten flowers. Again,
And
flowers.
that's what happens when they touch the drab to the scrael.
Mm-hmm.
We also hear that Kote's fire smells of rotten flowers and burning hair. And so I think the smell he's burning
luring.
it. He's luring them in with that scent of
Yep.
their own dead, which implies also that when they die, maybe they give off that scent and lure more of themselves to that place. So like lending to the pit and the fire and the burning and burying them, lending to that, if you don't take care of it properly, the scent will draw more of them. Right?
Yeah. It's almost like a way of calling in reinforcements.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the wood that they have to use maybe has to be like, it gives off a really strong essence when you burn it, right?
Other odor, to cover it. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, like masks it. Yeah.
Right. Totally.
Rowan wood. Yeah.
Get it buried down deep enough, maybe to keep the scrael from finding the actual body and stuff. It's
they can't dig through it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or again, it just masks the scent enough that they can't find it.
Just being far enough down.
Yeah.
For sure. Totally agree.
So that's all I got for Devi After Dark. Have anything to add?
I do not. Nope. But
Matt, how was this first episode for you, covering new material? Did you like it?
I enjoyed. This is gonna. Some readers are gonna blanch at this, but I mean it in all sincerity. I enjoyed talking about it more than I enjoyed actually reading it or preparing for this episode. I enjoyed talking about it with you, seeing your love and passion for it, all of those things, more than I enjoyed even just preparing to talk about it. So,
well, I hope that fades and the enjoyment of prep comes back. To me, I mean, I also struggled, but also we've been away from our formula for so long of like this much coverage in one episode that it struggled for me to get even back. Like, what is it? How do I do it? And what goes in the After Dark section and all those things. It was a little rough to prep, to be honest. It was harder than it's been. Our recent Meet the Khalasar episodes were one chapter, right? Usually,
and spoiler abound.
12 to 20 pages or something, right?
Right.
And we're here, covering 40. And I thought it was good. I thought we did well. It's gonna be a little bit of an adjustment to get used to it, but another new normal for us.
Yep. For the creatures of habit that we are, we sure love to throw wrenches into our systems every once in a while.
Occasionally, yeah. You had a sign off?
A very simple one. We've already covered it. But just remember, guys, that sometimes the greatest successes come from decisions you make when you stop thinking and just do what you feel is right.
I'm going to just sign off with the ending of the prologue. It was the patient cut flower sound of a man who is waiting to die. And aren't we all? Yeah, I said it.
Yep.
Thanks for listening, old listeners and new. Appreciate you coming on the journey with us.
Good night. Until next time. And fade to black.